What do you call a blind dinosaur? I don't know, you'd have to ask him his name. The 1998 Godzilla. This movie really gets a lot of shit from people, and I think lately, now it's been, I guess this is like 20 years now that the movie's been out, people are starting to reevaluate it. But for the most part, everyone hated this movie. It's like cool to hate the movie, and I've always liked it. It's ridiculous, but I've always really liked it a lot, and I think the movie has been exhaustively made fun of. I mean, so many people have made, 45-minute videos just pointing out flaws in the movie and criticizing them. So I just want to address some of the major criticisms that the movie gets. The first is the redesign of Godzilla. I mean, there are like 30 fucking Godzilla movies, so I don't understand why it was such a fucking huge catastrophe that they redesigned him one time. I mean, at least they tried something new in 30 times. Was it successful? I don't know. I like the way it looks. I mean, I understand the argument, and I agree that if they hadn't called it Godzilla and they just had the fishing boat guy say something other than Gojira.
What did you see, old man?
Godzilla. Godzilla.
I don't know, it just would have been a great monster movie. It's still a great monster movie. And it's a good, I think, it's like a perfect example of what an Americanized Godzilla is. And we'll get to that. But the angry fans got what they wanted later, and in Final Wars, Godzilla fans have come to refer to the 98 Godzilla as simply Zilla. So in Final Wars, Godzilla throws Zilla into the fucking Sydney Opera House, and that's pretty much it, yeah. But so, one thing about this movie is that, like, from the very start, you just see Godzilla completely fucking destroy this city. And, well, maybe not completely destroy, but all you see is, like, destruction scenes. And then the things that happen in the movie sort of all revolve around that. So it feels like Godzilla's in the movie a lot longer than he is. One of the things that I really hated about the 2014 Godzilla was that, Godzilla's only in the movie for 7 minutes, and it's in like the last 20 minutes of the movie. And when I was looking at clips of this one, of all of the Godzilla clips, there's only like 11 minutes of Godzilla in this movie. But I thought about it, and it's because there's all of the destruction just straight from Jump Street that it feels more like a disaster movie than the first one, where it's just building up with Heisenberg breaking and entering. I mean, the new Godzilla might maintain the basic shape, but it looks different too. It's like a redesign of Godzilla, and I don't think it looks very good. I mean, obviously the CG is better, but I don't know. I don't really like the design that much. So another major criticism that the movie gets is the change in the origin of Godzilla. Now, in the original one, Godzilla is basically like a ancient dinosaur god thing that is awoken by nuclear testing, and it's basically a statement on the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in the original Gojira, it's a pretty powerful one. I mean, it's a ridiculous monster movie from the 50s when you look at it now, but I mean, I guess at the time it was, hey, look at this big thing that's America that just fucking destroyed our cities. So when you Americanize it, it doesn't become a message about Japan anymore. It's just a monster movie. And I think that the way that they changed it, that nuclear testing mutated this animal into Godzilla, I think that that was well done. Because even in the 1954 the Americanized version of the original Gojira, the Godzilla King of the Monsters, they took all of the anti-war shit out, and it was just a monster movie. So all of that political commentary about, you know, the bombings and stuff, like all those anti-war messages, they took that shit out. So those criticisms, I think, are just sort of ridiculous because, I mean, you know, look at Godzilla 1985, where it's nothing but a fucking Dr. Pepper commercial. That's... I mean, any Americanized version of Godzilla is obviously not going to capture the original, you know, it's not going to be able to honor the original, like, ideas and symbols behind Godzilla. But I guess that would be like Japan trying to Japanize the Maury Povich show or something.
During your relationship with Keisha, have you had oral sex with women in the studio where you produce music? You said no. The lie detector test determined that was a lie.
But nobody ever, like, criticizes that. It's always, oh, the 1998 Godzilla, this made it look different. It's really shitty. So Dean Devlin said that he basically wanted to approach it like it's a real animal and make it realistic. And, I mean, I felt like they kind of did that. I mean, it's not, like, just a monster running around. It's an animal that is just laying some eggs and trying to store up some fish for little baby Godzillas, just doing its thing. And you feel bad for it. It's just like Godzilla's not an antagonist. It's just like doing its thing, and it just happens to get into the city and they just kill it like it's a bad guy. See, that's something with the new Godzilla that it's those Muto things, like I identified with them. They were the ones in that movie that were just animals trying to do their thing, you know? They were having their little eggs or whatever the hell they were doing. And then here comes Godzilla breathing fire down their throats, just killing parents and baby eggs and stuff. You can't sympathize with that character. I mean, yeah, it looks really cool. Like, the 7 minutes that Godzilla is in that movie are super fucking awesome and way cooler than anything in the 98 Godzilla. Like, don't get me wrong. My problem with that is that there's just too much human drama in it, and that's something that the 1998 version gets criticized for. But I think that for me it doesn't feel that way because of how I was saying, because of the city is destroyed from the beginning of the movie, so everything that's human drama revolves around the city being destroyed. So there's still that, like, looming presence of Godzilla, even if he's not on screen. In the 2014 Godzilla, you don't even know that Godzilla is a thing until, like, an hour into the movie or something like that. Maybe longer. It's ridiculous. It's just all about Heisenberg and his little goofy kick-ass son. And so while all of that is played serious and it's just completely boring, you know, and the 1998 is just ridiculous camp, and it knows that. It's part of those pre-9/11 just ridiculous, fun, stupid action movies that post-9/11, everyone's favorite word became gritty. It's a gritty, dark... Oh, it's a gritty, dark version of this. Look how dark and violent it is. So obviously Matthew Broderick is not an action superstar, but at least he has charisma. I mean, he was fucking Ferris Bueller. Come on. Everybody loves to hate on Matthew Broderick in this movie, and especially ones who like Ferris Bueller. I don't understand it.
That's a lot of fish.
So another major criticism that the film gets is about how Godzilla dies. He just gets blown up by a bunch of missiles. And he's getting hit by missiles through the whole movie, so for him to get hit by missiles and just die on the bridge is, I guess, I don't know. It doesn't really make much sense. But if you think about the original Godzilla, how they killed him, they basically took a fucking giant oxygen pill and dropped it in the ocean, and then Godzilla's dead. I mean, Godzilla is basically indestructible. There's no way to kill it. So, I mean, you have to end the movie somehow. You can't end it with just fucking Godzilla's loose and he's killing people and then the end. I mean, You know, if I made a Godzilla movie, that's what would happen. But this is a movie made with, you know, major backing from the Pepsi Corporation. That's another thing, is there is a ton of product placement in this movie, and the marketing campaign behind this movie was enormous. There was, I remember all of the little dog commercials from Taco Bell, and then there were like billboards and stuff that had like, it just said, his foot is this big. So the movie is considered a flop. It had a budget of 130 million, and I believe it made 370 million. Now they were probably expecting it to do like $1 billion or something like that, so it's considered a failure, even though it more than doubled its budget. I mean, one major thing with big movies like this is that they invest a ton of money, sometimes more than the budget of the movie, on the marketing. You know, obviously nostalgia plays a big part in the liking or disliking of movies like these. I was like 12 years old when it came out, and I loved it. It was, you know, if I was a little bit older when it came out and I watched it, I would probably not like it as much as I do now, because it's like a comfort movie or something. And there's a lot of movies from the 80s and 90s that are like that. Like, there are a lot of people who really love that movie, Nothing But Trouble, and I just fucking hate that movie. But they all watched it from the time they were like 10 years old, and I didn't see it until I was like 28 or something like that, and so it was just stupid. Like, Independence Day got that same reaction. People who were younger when it came out really enjoyed it, and people who were older were like, oh, well, that's cool models, but and now as an adult looking back on it, I can see the flaws in it, but I still like the movie. I think with all of those Roland Emmerich movies, at least, you know, like Stargate, Independence Day, and Godzilla, I really love like the first 30 to 45 minutes of those movies. Like, once they go through the Stargate, it gets boring, but everything up to then is really captivating to me, even though it's just like boring shit that doesn't really have any action going on. In Independence Day, I like it up to the point where they've destroyed everything, and then once the uprising begins, it just gets boring. With Godzilla, it gets to the end, and then it goes into, you know, it just becomes Jurassic Park 2 Lost in New York, and that's something that I think everyone, it just stands out so much. The original Japanese version was really heavy in its subject matter, and this one isn't, but it's still, you know, a fun creature feature popcorn monster movie, and people act like it's the end of the fucking universe because they changed the way Godzilla looked in one movie. People say that the CG is really bad, and, you know, it's not the best, but they shot Godzilla all at night and in the rain, and that sort of masked how bad it looked. And a lot of people just shit on the CG of this movie so bad, but I mean, if you look at movies that came later, like, look at The Mummy Returns with the Scorpion King, or think about that Legolas scene in that Hobbit movie. Many CGI success, right? There's the criticism that he doesn't fight any monsters, and yeah, that's true, but in the original Gojira, he doesn't fight any monsters either, so does that mean that that one sucks? Now, I am a big fan of the Godzilla series and the movies, and most people are like, oh, if you're a fucking real Godzilla fan, there's no way you can like the 98 Godzilla. It's only people who have never seen Godzilla movies that like them. I mean, I understand the criticism that it's not really Godzilla, but franchises make changes all the time, and people don't give them nearly as much criticism as this has gotten. At least they tried something different. You can see the original Godzilla 30 different times, and a lot of those are really campy and hokey, and people are like, oh, those are the greatest fucking movies ever made. Not all of them are. Not by a long shot. Now, there was an animated series that was based on the movie that came on Fox Kids, I believe. I never watched it when it came out because I never woke up early enough to watch Saturday morning cartoons. They came on at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't wake up until like noon on Saturdays. But I understand that Godzilla fans who hate the movie do enjoy the show, and Godzilla fights other monsters. I've seen clips of it, but I think there are episodes on YouTube, but I've never sat down and really watched them. I wish there had been a video game based on this movie, because if you think about, like, if you've played those NES or Super Nintendo Godzilla games, they are not good or fun at all. It's like playing Minesweeper or something, but a much more convoluted version that doesn't make sense. So it would have been cool to have a game like how The Lost World was, where they had the parts where you could play as the T-Rex. So if you could play as Godzilla and destroy the city, but I'm sure that 1998 PlayStation version of Godzilla wouldn't have been very great. I don't know, though. The Lost World was good and had good controls, so I suppose that it was possible, but I doubt that it would have been good if they would have made it. It would have had shitty controls and been boring and monotonous. I really love the intro to the movie, the opening credits, the music and everything. David Arnold's score is great in this. I really love it. I also really like the soundtrack to the movie. This is one of the first CDs that I ever owned, and I really like it. I mean, the Puff Daddy song I never really liked that much, just because I don't like Led Zeppelin, and I hadn't heard the Led Zeppelin song before that, and I didn't like it. And then when I heard Led Zeppelin, I was like, I don't really like that either, any of it. Now, is it a great movie? Not by any stretch of the imagination. Is it a good movie? Not really. Is it a fun popcorn movie that you can put on and just have play and have fun with? Absolutely. So in the end, you know, I totally understand the hate that it gets, but when I see those criticisms, I don't see them as major problems that just ruin the movie. I mean, I understand both sides of it, you know, why they made the changes that they did and why people don't agree with the changes that they made. But I guess you can never really win. So yeah, I mean, if they hadn't called it Godzilla and it was just a monster movie, I think it would have been much more successful than it was. I mean, it's still not a great movie, but it's fun and I enjoy it. Alright guys, well thanks so much for watching this. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.